Hi, this topic started with a simple but provocative question. Do strong, educated, and empowered women lead to broken homes and looser social morals? It's something we have all heard, maybe from an older relative or even in the media. But is it actually true? When I first came across this idea, I was curious, not to debate opinions, but to see what the data says. So, today we are going to look at what the numbers from Australia reveal about women's education, employment, and family life, and find out if empowerment really breaks families or if the truth is something far more inspiring. So, why should we care? Let's start with why this even matters. Three huge shifts are happening right now in Australia. The first one is education, where school retention has risen from 87% in 2014 to 91% in 2022. That's thousands more young women finishing school. Second, female employment has increased from 52.6% in 2004 to 59% in 2020, meaning more women entering and staying in the workforce. Third, women's weekly earnings have risen from $822 in 2012 to over $1,000 in recent years, reflecting growing economic power. These aren't just statistics, they represent women's growing voice, power, and presence in society. So when people ask, is this growth breaking families? It's not just a cultural question, it's a data driven social question. Now, who are the women around us? Before diving into education and employment, let's look at the population itself. This population pyramid shows Australia in 2024. The x axis represents population size, the y axis represents age groups. Females are on the left, males are on the right. Now, look closely. Notice how the female side is wider at the top, meaning women live longer and they form a much larger share of the older population. This matters for two reasons. One, Australia's population is aging, and women are at the heart of that demographic change. Two, women today aren't just present, they are active, educated, and economically engaged at every age level. So, as we examine education, work, and family, remember this isn't just about young women rising, it's about an entire demographic transformation. Let's start this story where it all begins education. Here's a line chart showing school retention between 2014 and 2022. The orange line represents female students. It starts around 87% in 2014 and climbs steadily above 91% by 2022. Notice something? The female line consistently stays above the male line. This means more young women are finishing school than ever before, and the gender gap in retention hasn't closed. It's actually widened slightly in women's favor. This is important because school completion sets the foundation for later opportunities in employment, in income, and in personal independence. It's the first domino that sets others in motion. Now let's go beyond school. When we look at non school qualification, things like diplomas, bachelor's, and postgraduate degrees, women have not only caught up with men, they have surpassed them. You can see it clearly in the data. The share of women holding qualifications has risen steadily over time. Among younger and mid aged groups, women's rates of attainment are significantly higher than men's. This isn't just a story of catching up, it's a story of educational leadership. Women are leading in academic achievement, in professional qualifications, and in the pursuit of lifelong learning. And that rise in education sets the stage for the next part of the story employment. Education fits directly into workforce participation. From 52.6% in 2004 to nearly 60% in 2020, female employment in Australia has grown strongly. Now, that might sound like a small change, just 7 percentage points, but it represents hundreds of thousands of women entering and staying in the workforce. This is a structural shift, not a short term spike. It changes how households function, how children are raised, and how financial stability is built. A dual income household, for instance, has greater resilience during economic downturns. Women working also means children grow up seeing both parents contributing, shaping how future generations understand gender roles. Let's look deeper into the nature of that employment. Yes, more women are working full time than before, but part time work remains a significant portion of female employment. Why? Because many women balance dual responsibilities, professional work and caregiving at home. So, while full time participation is rising, flexible and part time roles remain crucial for work life balance. This pattern also pushes workplaces to rethink flexibility, not as a favor to women, but as an essential part of modern employment design. Now, let's talk about income, because financial independence is at the core of empowerment. In this box plot, we can see weekly earnings for men and women. The female distribution sits lower across almost all industries, showing that the gender pay gap persists. On the bar chart, we can see that the gap often ranges between 20 and 25%, depending on the industry. Even with higher education and stronger participation, women are still climbing an uneven ladder. Education narrows the gap, yes, but it hasn't closed it. So while women are achieving more, the rewards of those achievements are still not fully equal. Now, all these trends, education, employment, and earnings, have real world consequences. Higher education and stable employment give women more than just qualifications or income, they give agency. Financial security reduces vulnerability during job loss, economic shocks, or relationship breakdowns. Educated mothers are also more likely to invest in their children's schooling and health, and in the long term, these changes reshape communities from the household level all the way to the national economy. So, these aren't abstract numbers, they are living realities that ripple through families and across generations. Let's finally confront the central question: does higher education among women lead to family breakdown? Here's a dual axis scatter chart showing divorce rates alongside women's tertiary education levels between 2004 and 2020. As women's tertiary education rose from 55% to 65%, the number of divorces fell from around 52,700 to 49,000. That's the opposite of the stereotype. Instead of more education leading to more divorces, the data shows that education may actually protect relationships. Why? Because education often brings better financial stability, improved communication, and a greater ability to make thoughtful life choices. It also leads to delayed marriages, but often more stable ones. So far from breaking families, education appears to strengthen them. But what about employment? Some argue that women joining the workforce disrupt traditional family structures and increase divorce. To test that, we used regression analysis to see if higher female employment correlates with divorce rates. If there were a strong relationship, we would expect a low p value below 0.05, meaning employment significantly predicts divorce. But the result, its p equals to 0.45. That's far above 0.05, which means the relationship is statistically insignificant. In other words, there is no meaningful link between more women working and higher divorce rates. Once again, the data tells a very different story from the myth. And here's the evidence in detail. The regression summary table shows multiple R, which is low, R square, which is almost zero, and P value, which is high. All of this confirms the same conclusion. Female employment does not predict or cause divorce. So while society often worries about the impact of women's empowerment on families, the actual data shows that the effect is neutral or even positive when combined with education. Let's pause and summarize what we have discovered. Female school retention increased from 87.4% in 2014 to 91% in 2022. Women with non school qualifications rose from 55% to around 65%. Female employment grew from 52.6% to nearly 60%. Postgraduate women have much higher full time employment than those without qualifications. Female weekly earnings have steadily increased even though the pay gap persists. Divorces declined even as women's education rose. Employment has no significant effect on divorce rates. When we connect all of these patterns, the story becomes very clear. Women's empowerment through education and work is not eroding families, it's creating stronger, more balanced, and more resilient ones. So, what does this entire journey tell us? The journey of women in Australia is one of education, empowerment, and resilience. Women are now more educated, more employed, and more financially independent than ever before. And contrary to the old stereotype, these changes haven't led to family breakdown. In fact, education appears to stabilize families. Yes, there are still challenges, the gender pay gap, leadership barriers, and unequal domestic workloads, but the larger picture is one of progress. Education and family stability are not opposites, they grow side by side. And that's the power of storytelling with data. It cuts through assumptions and lets reality speak for itself. So, if we return to our opening question, do strong, educated, empowered women lead to broken homes? The answer from the data is clear and powerful. No, strong women don't break families, they help build stronger ones. Thank you so much for your time. Working on this was a pleasure. This has been Prokaroy Ratri.